Where's the outrage? Why are people not outraged with this terrible leadership that we're suffering? And, that's kind of a thought, like we're looking at Egypt nowadays, we're looking at Tunisia, we're looking at Libya, and we wonder where's the outrage. So if you're taking outrage and anger as that which seeks to right the wrong, which seeks justice, which seeks harmony, which seeks peace, actually, against violence, and is actually ultimately non-violent but forceful, then we can talk about the wisdom of anger, and that's really what we're talking about today. Semantically, we have to then take the word anger away from the idea of mad as hell, Mad meaning loss of your self-control, loss of your judgment, where you just flip out, and you become a hammer in the hands of your rage, and you just smash everything in front of you. That is never wise. So that is the opposite of wisdom. The anger that could be wise has to be one like a martial artist, like Aikido master, who is forceful but totally cool and actually loves even the opponent and is seeking to simply diminish the violence manifested by the enemy or the opponent and turn that violence into harmony and peace, even though it might involve temporarily suppressing whatever that enemy is doing. It could, in some extreme cases, even lead to what we think of as killing. But the only kind of person who could do that in a non-violent way would be a completely enlightened person who would be not identifying the enemy with their body and would be moving their soul into a better place than the enemy, who was themselves doing violence, would be making for themselves, the hell they would be making by their bad behavior. So anger can be creative, or the heat of anger can be creative. I was rereading the preamble to my book on anger with Oxford Press, Among the Seven Deadly Sins, and I got myself totally confused and delighted reading that preamble, because in that I sort of say I agree that anger is bad and evil, I don't agree that it's bad and evil, it can be conquered, it can't be conquered. I went back and forth all kinds of ways. I was having a lot of fun, I can see. I myself have had in my life a big problem with anger, and still I lose my cool all too easily, because I wrongly get involved in thinking that my view of things is just the reality, and when something doesn't accord with my view, I just want to escalate to every reaction that I can, every action that I can, to try to make it work, rather than realizing the relativity of my view, that others' views are like they are, and that it has to be really a composite of the different views and involve empathy and compassion and the ability to see how others are seeing things before I really dare to use force to impose my view. And even then, I should never do it when I'm angry. Here I agree with Seneca, the great ancient Western theorist, not only with the Buddhists, who says that, for example, a judge, even though the criminal is totally guilty, if that judge is feeling anger and loathing and disgust and hatred toward that criminal, they should postpone their sentencing. They should never do anything forceful when angry, and they should not judge in anger. And some other people think that anger makes you, judge properly, and anger is appropriate and should punish and all that. But I don't agree. Aristotle a little bit agrees with that, but I don't agree with that. So now, what to do about how to understand anger? Now, in Buddhism, we have several responses about anger. And Buddha taught in different ways, depending on, of course, what you think the Buddha taught. If you are a fundamentalist of dualistic Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, and you think Buddha didn't teach the Mahayana, or you think Buddha didn't teach the Vajrayana, Tantra, then you really are of the view that Buddha never taught the positive value of anger. It is just completely no good. Hatred will not put an end to hatred. Violence will not put an end to violence. Only love can put an end to hatred. Only nonviolence can put an end to violence. That is the Buddha's dualistic teaching, which remains valid even in non-dualism, even in Vajrayana. That remains valid. And I'll try to explain why. If you are a Mahayanist, then you realize that Buddha taught a certain use for the energy of anger, if not the naive, realistic sort of use of anger as hatred, as a kind of generating kind of activity of mind as well as body and speech, where you are a helpless tool of fury and you just act without any judgment. Mahayana would agree with the dualistic Buddhist view on that, absolutely, that anger is no good. But The Mahayana would say that the Bodhisattva, like the peacock who can use poison to be beautiful, the Bodhisattva can use the heat, the fire of anger, take it away from the naive mental approach where you become helpless and lack all judgment, and in a way use anger in a cool way, without hatred, let's say. Take the anger away from the hatred, and coolly use force to improve a situation, to block the hateful force used by someone else, but without increasing the amount of violence, without increasing the amount of hatred. In a loving way, in other words, that there could be fierce love, there could be fierce compassion. Mahayana would definitely teach this, but Mahayana would in a way not give you the full methodology of this, or exoteric Mahayana, because they still are using the dualistic thing, focusing on beings freeing themselves ever from reacting out of blind anger or blind hatred, and realizing the value. And therefore, for example, Mahayana, Universal Vehicle Buddhism, is never against dualistic or Theravada Buddhism, ever. It only adds to it, let's say. It sees it as a foundation of people learning to really free themselves, but then use that freedom. Then Mahayana adds the dimension of using that freedom creatively to transform the world of others, adding to nonviolence and non-attachment and non-delusion. It adds to that active love and compassion and forceful wisdom and this sort of thing. So Mahayana does that. Now there are Mahayanas, actually the majority, I would say, in taking in the people of East Asia, China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and so forth, who don't really know much about Tantra and Vajrayana, and which mainly Tibet is the main great repository of that in world history. And they even think that's some weird shamanism, that some weird country bumpkin Tibetans invented, and it's not real Buddhism, and they have that attitude. Shingon Buddhists in Japan and the few esoteric Buddhists in China know better, but it's quite rare, actually. And although the Dalai Lama and other great Tibetan masters are beginning to bring out the methodology of Vajrayana and reassure the universal or Mahayana Buddhists in other countries, and even the dualistic Buddhists in Theravada countries, that the Vajrayana is Buddha's teaching. It is the quintessential methodology, in fact, of Buddha's mind transformation in its most succinct and powerful form, but in a way kind of advanced, and therefore never seeking to displace monastic, dualistic Theravada Buddhism, individualistic Theravada Buddhism, universalistic, non-dual Mahayana Buddhism. Never seeks to displace them, but seeks to complement them and to find an inner methodology for those who are ready for it. And of course, in Vajrayana Buddhism, we have the phenomenon of Yamantaka, Vajrabhaidava, the diamond terrorist, Yamantaka, the killer of death, the Terminator dash exterminator, the exterminator of the Terminator, Series 5 Terminator, who gets rid of bad Terminators, the god of death. You have this phenomenon in Vajrayana, and that is where you go directly to the place where the heat of hatred and anger arises from, which is the place where you just don't want to see wrong things. You don't want harm and suffering to exist in the world. You will rise even in fury if necessary to stop it, and if you are capable of that. The problem, of course, with the unenlightened person or the person with no self-critical attitude is that they see something bad happening, they arise with fury, but then once gripped by the fury, they add to the bad. They behave badly. They will overdo. They will overreact. They will destroy 20 people instead of stopping the negative activity of one person. They will do civilian bombing. They will have collateral damage, do you follow me? Because they can't control themselves when they're playing with that fire, with the thermonuclear energy of pure anger, pure hatred. But in Vajrayana, this pure energy can be used creatively if first of all, you have some detachment and separation from your original gut reactions, that are stimulated as an ignorant person taking your own ego so seriously, and attributing agency to the egos of others so realistically and so concretistically, then you are unable to really do this. So you have to develop a little level of renunciation and detachment. Then you have to cultivate the spirit of enlightenment, of love and compassion, the Bodhisattva mind, where you really are cultivating empathy with others, love for others. So that love and compassion for even the most evil demon, even Lucifer, you don't hate the devil, you would have to develop that, cultivate that love and compassion of the spirit of enlightenment of the Bodhisattva, who takes the Bodhisattva vow to free from suffering, to become a Buddha, to free from suffering even the most evil beings, who's ready to feed their body to cannibals, to tigers, and to, like the Buddha did in his previous life. That's then the next level. You have to cultivate that. Then you can develop that. You can become a being that wants to be like that, even though maybe you're not able right away because you're still attached to yourself, and you know certain things. You have a line, when they cross, you flip out and all this. But you're cultivating working on that. And then third, which makes the other two really doable, you have to develop wisdom to the extent that you know that any structure of yourself, any ego structure that you feeling is the real you, and any ego structure you attribute and project into other beings as the real them, is really a construction. And it doesn't have real reality. It has only superficial and conventional reality. And wisdom critically sees that, so it gives you an automatic ability to disidentify from the most sort of concretized emotions, the seemingly irresistible impulses that you may have. It gives you like an ability to sort of see things as a movie projection, as an illusion, and that illusory, having an illusory quality, and which creatively a magical quality, and that gives you a level of freedom from being a prisoner of your own gut impulses. And once you have those three things to the prerequisite degree, and the wisdom will only be at a first stage a kind of inference, where you rationally understand that. In other words, I feel like I'm really Bob and I have to freak out, but rationally I understand there is no really Bob and no really freaking out energy, and therefore that reasoning can critically give me a distance and enable me to disidentify from the sort of grosser, more concretized elements of my impulse, and be able to then regain control of that energy and begin to play with the idea of using heat, using fire, if you will, to play with fire and not be burned by the fire, and not overburn the other beings with the fire, not add to the flame. You know, this is a very like a cool crystal heat, the heat that makes possible what I call cool heroism, which is the Bodhisattva hero, which is the type of person we need, the type of outrage that we need in this country, because we don't want a violent revolution. We never speak of the violent overthrow of even the most violent military-industrial complex. We never do, because the only way you would do that is by a new military-industrial revolutionary complex, and then you have that revolutionary complex, like in the Soviet Union, like in Red China, like wherever violence conquers, overthrows a violent regime violently, the new regime is more violent, and it doesn't do any good for the people. The only kind of successful revolution is one that is nonviolent, where we get to that level of the diamond energy of anger. That is where anger is channeled as wisdom, and it becomes, of the five wisdoms, it becomes the wisdom of ultimate reality, perfection, insight, where it, in a way, through analysis, you have to realize that analysis, wisdom is analytic. It takes things apart into their parts and pieces, down to smashes the atoms. It goes into the subatomic thing. It gets down to the wave particle. It gets down to where quantum physics has reached, into the realm of probabilities, which means illusory realm, where it realizes the illusory nature of seemingly concrete reality. And wisdom, Buddha's wisdom, did that already thousands of years ago. And the wisdom of the great adepts and the great pundits of India and the great yogis of Tibet, and I think the Zen yogis of East Asia and the Shingon tantric yogis of Japan, I think they got into these areas, and a few other people here and there, but basically you can't go too deep into here without the deep inner teaching of the Buddha, which was lost after the destruction of Buddhism in India, except for Tibet and for the Shingon people of Japan, and some maybe hidden Zen people possibly. So Chan and Zen people. So how you do this is something that some of the teachers here may share with you. But don't think that you can do it without practicing the Theravada mindfulness thing, to learn how your own impulses work, to gain some ability to disidentify from them, to be free from being automatically controlled by sort of gut impulses of fury and anger. Those will always be destructive. They will destroy you. Shantideva says you have to, they're like an addiction. They make you feel powerful temporarily when you get all heated up, but actually they weaken you because they destroy your judgment, and then they have you banging your head against walls. They can cause you to commit suicide, to become depressed if you internalize it, and they are completely destructive, and you have to learn to free yourself from that. No method could be more freeing from that than the great teaching of Shantideva, given in his Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, 6th chapter, where he talks about replacing hatred and anger by tolerance and patience, and learning tolerant patience, learning insightful patience, and learning forgiving patience, the 3 levels of patience, 3 levels of tolerance where no one actually can make you angry. You have an armor of patience that you will die before you will become crazed with anger. So you will never be mad as hell. You will not create hell. You can be mad in a conscious way, creating heaven actually, but never creating hell. You never will do it. Thank you very much. Enjoy your anger and your wisdom. Okay? Bye.